is.
Look at all times, look at me.
All right, okay, very good.
Okay, just for the record, can I have your
Okay,
name?
you want me to read this brief
Yes,
statement?
but can you just give me your name
Yeah,
first?
all right. Our family,
Dave, he doesn't have to speak loud.
Okay, just for the record, can you give me your name first?
yeah, David E. Eliahu Rousso, R-A-U-S-S-O.
Okay, and you have a statement you'd like to?
Yeah. Our family, my mother, Rachel Eliahu Rousso, together with 4 children, Chaim, David, Nissim, and Esterina, were living in Salonica, Greece during the disastrous fire that destroyed most of the city during 1970. I was 10 years old at that time. And I'm really quoting from memory. We had arrived in Salonica from Monastir in 1916 on a trip to join our older brother Louie, who emigrated from Monastir to the United States in 1913. Unfortunately, there was no transportation available at that time for the duration of the war. We had 4 uncles living in Salonica, our mother's brothers, the Meshulam family. Together with their families, they helped us to get settled in Salonica for the time being. The fire raged in all directions. The winds were fierce. We had no choice but to abandon our apartment and flee to the suburbs. Our uncles hired wagons and horses to transport us to the other villages away from the burning inferno. When the city was calm after several months, the Jewish community from Salonica, together with the Serbian government, arranged to transport all the families that came from Monastir to relocate them elsewhere. They selected a spa called Loutra, about 20 miles from Salonica. Entertaining, there were about 100 rooms, and from all the food and provided all the food and lodging required for the duration. When the war was over in 1918, we all returned to Monastir. Sometime thereafter, we traveled again to Salonica to pick up the boat to the United States. 2 of our uncles eventually settled in Mexico. The other 2, Moise Meshulam and Baruch Meshulam, together with their families, remained in Salonica and suffer the fate of the Holocaust.
Okay. I'd like to ask you a few questions
Sure.
To elaborate further on what you mentioned. As you said, your family was born in Monastir. You were born
Right.
in Monastir, and can you tell me more about the decision to go to Salonica?
It was very obvious, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Before we start with
Yeah.
that, can you just tell me when you were born?
I was born 1907,
Okay.
Monastir,
What month and day?
November.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about your mother and your father and your family?
Yes. Our father had a small little store. He was involved in the making passementery ornaments for soldiers, for horses, things like that. A very small store, in which I would go there occasionally. Sometime about a year after, we lost a sister that died there in Monastir. And thereafter, we lost our father. He died also in Monastir. So it was very obvious that we had no other choices but to try to go with where our brother was to be able to live.
Your father's name was Eliahu?
Eliahu, yes.
And this was your father's brother that you,
No, his mother.
your mother's brother that you were going to join.
Let me get some information first. Okay, your father's name was Eliahu.
Eliahu Rousso,
Your
that's right.
grandfather?
My grandfather, Aaron
So your
Rousso.
father was Eliahu Aaron,
Eliahu Yehuda Rousso.
Eliahu Yehuda
Rousso.
Rousso. And your mother was Rachel
Rachel
Meshulam.
Meshulam. Well, before marriage,
Right,
of course,
before
yeah,
marriage,
before
then she
marriage.
married
Meshulam,
your father.
yeah.
Now, how many brothers did you have?
3 others.
Louie was Yehuda.
Louie and Chaim or Victor. And then I came as David. Then Nissim or Nelson. And Esther, our daughter.
How many sisters altogether?
Well, we had 2 sisters. One passed away in Monastir when she was very young.
And what was her name?
Huh?
What was her name?
Saul.
She was the youngest?
She was the oldest of 2 sisters, yeah.
Do you remember your grandparents?
Grandparents. I'm trying to think just where my grandparents are. I don't have any now, so that's what you mean. I don't have any right now.
Your mother's family, Meshulam, was
Meshulam.
from Salonica.
Meshulam, yes.
So your grandparents were in Salonica.
From Salonica, yes. They were from Salonica,
When
yes.
you went to Salonica, did you meet your grandparents?
I met my uncles.
Your mother's
My uncles. My mother's brothers. They
your
were,
mother's brothers.
yes, they had been in Salonica for many, many years. And Salonica was a very thriving city in those days.
And what were their names? Do you remember their names?
Yes, one is Mushon, Mentesh, Baruch, and the other one escapes my memory.
Okay. Your father had brothers also?
My
Brothers.
father, I don't know very much about my brothers. Yes, my father's brother, together with his family, emigrated to Israel somewhere around 1900.
To Jerusalem?
Huh?
To Jerusalem?
Yeah, no, I didn't meet him. No, he passed away. I met the family.
Did the family live in Jerusalem?
They live in Jerusalem, and I have a photograph of the family.
Any other information?
No, I think that's okay. So let's continue a bit about your move from Monastir to Salonica.
Salonica, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me a bit more? What do you remember? Do you remember? Yeah. Well, you said it was in 1916.
1916. Yes, I remember quite well. And then we were all very young. None of us. So my brother was a little older. He was 13 or 14. He was able to seek employment, get employment with my uncles there. With my uncles, I was too young at that time to work, and we went to the school in Salonica, the Alliance Israeli Universelle, and we went there for about a year and a half or so until the fire.
Mhm. Do you remember anything about the Balkan Wars at all when you were living in Monastir?
No, I was too young for that. The Turks left, I think, were driven out in 1911, 1912, and from there on, it was pretty obvious that the tranquility that had existed in Monastir for hundreds of years was no longer so. And the elders of our community have advised all the families to send their young to America because the conditions are not stable.
Mhm.
Were you going to school in Monastir?
Yes, I went to school. I went to the Hebrew school for a while. Then I went to a regular school where they taught us Hebrew and French.
Okay. So let's go back again. Do you remember what was the difference like for you as a child in Salonica versus Monastir?
Well, I do. I mean, I had really nothing much to do. I was very young at the very beginning. For the first year or so, we just waited. Maybe there would be passage to go to the United States so we can get together with our brothers, but it didn't seem so. Then eventually I went to school. Salonica was really a very, very thriving city, a very beautiful city with waterways and railways and trains. It was a bubbling city. You might consider it like a metropolis, a business metropolis, you might say. And at that time, yeah.
Quite different from Monastir.
Oh, yes, yes. Monastir was a town. Monastir was a town, but Salonica was a very, very beautiful city. And of course, most of you know the history of Salonica. We had many, many temples there, many synagogues, and many rabbis. At one time, Salonica was considered like Jerusalem is today, you know.
Was your family very
There were
religious?
seats of learning.
Was your family very religious?
I don't think so. I really didn't know very much about this. They were all business people. They were merchants.
And do you
And
remember going-
unfortunately, during the fire, all their businesses were burned and their homes were burned.
Can you tell us more about the Alliance and your childhood?
I didn't know very much about the Alliance, but it appears that this was put up by a group of Frenchmen from Paris who set up this Alliance, not only Monastir, many other areas where Sephardim were living, to educate the people in the modern languages. And the Alliance still exists today. It still exists today in many countries, which its objective is to teach the people there, the Jewish people, of course, to learn something about the modern world and the modern languages. In Monastir, for the most part, you know, we all spoke Ladino. And what we learned in our schools was a Ladino and a little Hebrew. And then later on, we began to learn French.
Okay.
Do you remember where you lived in Salonica when you first got there?
If I remember where we
Where
lived,
you lived? Do you remember what part of the neighborhood, what it was called, what the street was?
I don't really know what it was called, but I do remember very distinctly. And one phase of it that I may have not mentioned is the fact that the community in Monastirs, we had a great community there. When we speak of community leadership of people who undertook to take care of all the people who had needs, orphans, and particularly, you know, those of us who were fugitives and that we left our country. They managed to send us foodstuffs, foods and other things during the entire period that we were there.
Do you remember what synagogue you went to in Salonica? Was there a Monastir?
I don't think I went into this in Salonica, but in Monastir, I do remember. Called Kadosh Aragon. There were two synagogues there. Yeah, Monastir, sure.
What was the other one called? Do you remember?
The other one, I really don't know, because after the name of the town in which they came from in there. Yes, I do remember that very well, very well.
But in Salonica, you didn't go.
No, things were different already. We had no one to take us there.
Do you remember when your brother left Monastir?
Yes, sure, he left in 1913.
How did you feel about your brother leaving and about?
Well, I was very, very young. I was very young. Now, we must understand that we had our father at that time, understand? Of course, when he passed away, it was a different situation. We had no one to take care of us. We had no one to take care of
Can I
us.
just stop you for a second? Joe, can you move more this way?
Yeah.
So even more next to me. Some more.
At that time, when our brother left for Monastir, there were other families, part of the Alcázar families, and many, many other families who left Monastir, knowing that Monastir, there was no future in Monastir for our people there. First, we had the Bulgarians who come in, then the Serbians come in, then the Frenchmen came in during war. It was a madhouse there. We, up till, I would say up till 1914, none of us knew what an airplane was in there. When we saw the airplanes come out and we saw bombs destroying it, then we knew that we had to go into shelters.
That was in Monastir.
In Monastir, yes. Monastir, yes. The war had begun.
How did the war affect you? I mean, do you remember much about the war?
Well, it affected us to the extent that we have no more safety, and many times we couldn't go to school because there were raids in Monastir. And not only that there were raids, there were different groups of soldiers coming in at all times, you know, the allies there.
How did it affect your father's business?
Well, my father already had been sick by that time. He had been sick, and he practically was not running his business.
When you went to Salonica, did you notice the war as much in Salonica? Was there bombing in
You
Salonica?
couldn't, no, there was nothing you could see. There were no raids or anything. The first that we knew about is during the Great Fire, which there were fire bombs on this day. And then you looked at, you heard the bomb, and then there was a fire. And no matter which way you turned, it was all on fire. There was no place to escape.
Do you remember the day the fire started? Do you remember how it started, how you first became
Well,
aware that there was a fire?
Again, I want to say I'm very young. I was very young at that time. I really don't know how it started. But there was a fire of war. The enemy said it. The enemy wanted to destroy Salonica, said it. It was not a spontaneous fire. And it destroyed more than half the city.
You remember the day, though? You remember leaving the house and...
I remember running from the house. Yes, our uncles hired a wagon with horses to take all of us and our furniture into the suburbs. Yes, I remember that much.
Do you remember where you went in the suburbs, what it was called?
And the Sonkers, I don't remember, but it probably was about 25 miles away from Salonica, where all the families went to. And on the way, when everything was over, when the fire was over, when people began to go there, of course, we didn't go there anymore. Our community took charge of all the families that were there, that lost their houses and whatever it is. They set us this particular metropolis called Loutra. We must have had maybe more than 100 families. And the Serbian government was in charge of the safety, of the security there. And we had our rabbis, we had the Talmud Torah there. We stayed there about a year and a half before, until the war was over. Then we all went back to Monastir.
Did you ever go back to the house in Salonica that was burned?
There was no house, no, we did go back to Salonica. When we went into the Serb, from there we went into this metropolis called Loutra. It was, in Spanish they used to call it Las Lijas de Ceres, Lijas de Ceres. And while we were there this year and a half, there was a military airport somewhere along the way, which most of us used to travel there, walking and going in trucks. And we used to try to do some business for them. We would buy some kerosene. We would bring in some laundry home to earn some money, and things of that sort.
Esto que me dicho, las lijas de ceras?
What's that?
Las lijas de ceras?
Lijas de Cera,
What
yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah, Lijas means bathhouse. Cera was the name. These were sulfur baths, health baths actually. It was a spa, health spa, which was not being used at that time, which people from the city, from Salonica, used to go periodically. And at that period in time, it was used for this purpose.
The other day you mentioned to me that you had known some people that were killed in the fire.
I really don't know from memory who was killed in a fire. I'm sure there were many, but I wouldn't know. None of our families.
None of your families?
None of our families, no.
Your uncles and the Meshulam family, they lived in the same area that you lived. You lived together.
Yes, they lived not far away, and they saw to it that we had all we needed.
And what was their business in Salonica?
They had stores selling stationery, tobaccos, perfumes, things of that sort. They seem to be well established. I would say that they've probably been in Salonica maybe 50 years or so.
They were originally Monastirese?
I guess so, yes. Originally they all came from Monastir.
Did they lose
Monastir
their
was
business?
not a town that they could, to earn a living. We had no resources there. We had no factories in there.
Did they lose their businesses also during the fire?
What's that? They lost their business and their homes, yes. Yeah, they had to start all over again.
Do you remember the name of the stores or
No.
no? Do you remember the Allied soldiers in Salonica? Did that help the financial situation any for your family or?
I don't remember seeing too many soldiers in Salonica. The only one that you would find, you would probably see the Greeks. I don't think we saw any other soldiers in there. Salonica seemed to have been well protected. They had no need of additional protection.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember, again, in the neighborhood where your family sort of lived, were you close to the water? Were you close
No.
to the Turkish section?
No. But we were familiar with the area of the water. There was an area which called, along the Mediterranean, which is called El Molo, where you could see the boats that they used to come in and so on. That was the theater section, the amusement center.
What kind? I mean, as a kid, was it an amusement center for a child or?
No, not for child. I mean, people who wanted to go to theaters and other. They used to have nightclubs there also.
Did you ever go to the theaters there? Or
Well, I was too small. I went to the theaters, to the movies. Yeah, sure. Yes, I remember seeing in those days. It was in Spanish. Yeah.
Do you remember what? Were they all silent or?
It may have been some in French.
Really?
Yeah, but most of us spoke Ladino. Those from Monastir, from Salonica, spoke the Spanish language.
Okay. Did you ever play with any of the children in your neighborhood?
No, we had no time for that. See, we had no time for that. My older brother worked, and for a while, we just roamed the city along the cafes, and then eventually we were placed in the school, L'Alliance, together with my younger brother and sister. Salonica was a thriving city, a city to enjoy life, to enjoy life. There
How
was
did you
commerce.
feel when you went back to Monastir? Did you want to go back to Salonica, or were you looking forward to come to the
But
United
again,
States?
we had nothing to go back to. We went back to Monastir. We wanted to come to America to see our brother, to see what they can do. And when we came to America, we came somewhere around September during the Passover holidays. And we were detained at Ellis Island for about a month because we were all very young, and we had no visible means of support.
Okay. Before you came to America, did you communicate with your brother? Did you get mail
Oh
from
yes,
your brother?
I used to write the letters for my mother, sure. Yeah, we did.
And
yeah.
then you came to America in what year?
In 1919, about
19
September
September
1919.
1919. So it was the Jewish holidays was Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah, that's right. And Hayes undertook to supply us with the required things which you needed, food and other things, while we were there in Ellis Island.
Okay. If we can just go back a bit before we get to Ellis Island, was your family, your brother's family, were they covered by insurance for the fire when they lost their stores and their homes?
I really don't know. I have no way of knowing. I was too young to know those details in there. I don't know that any insurance companies could have survived during that period of time.
Okay. Did anybody go back to Salonica from your family?
Well, all of them went back. I mean, our uncles were back. Sure, they went back there, and the conditions from there deteriorated. Eventually, two of them moved to Mexico with their families. And the other two, unfortunately, they were killed.
Did your family continue to keep in touch with them?
Well, yes, we used to write, communicate with one another, yes. The conditions there, the economic conditions during that period were very bad. They asked us to send them something, some sort of money out there, because when we were here, the only way we earned money was shining shoes. We had no money. We went to school up till 3 o'clock. Then from 3 to 7, we would go shine shoes. And we shine shoes Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, and we did that. But there was no other way to live.
This was in the U.S.?
Huh?
This was in the U.S.?
Sure, the U.S., yes. We had no money and we had no trade. Our brother at that time was unemployed also, and he was on the verge of getting married. So that we had to work our way in this country in order to make it.
When you first came to America, where did you live in New York when you first came here?
On Allen Street, and then we live in London Street for the rest of 10 years. Then eventually a lot of the people from the east side moved to new lots, and we lived there for 10, 15 years.
There was a Monastir society. in
There
Lower
was a
Side.
monastery, so from the very beginning. That's one of the things that the people that came from monastery set up the society for the purpose of organizing loans, free loans to people who need it, and for the purpose of organizing cemeteries.
Was anyone?
And it still exists today. Still exists today. Some of the young people are carrying it on. Yes.
Do you remember your trip from Monastir to New York?
The trip itself,
Yeah, do you remember how you went from, by boat?
when we came to America, by boat, yes, by boat. We took the boat in Greece at Patras. The name of the boat was an Italian boat, Belvedere. And on the way to America, somewhere in Gibraltar, they ran another boat in there, and they made a big hole there. So we stayed there for another week or two till they repaired. It was, you know, it's not the steamships that we have today, you know. They were small, crowded, and it was a way to come into the country.
Do you remember how long did the entire journey take from Patras?
It's about 30 days. About 30 days in those days.
And how did you get to Patras from Monastir?
Well, we came by train. Came by train to Salonica, and then our uncles took us to Patras and boarded us.
So you just passed through Salonica
Yeah,
on the
yes,
way
yes.
back. And what was life like aboard the boat for 30 days?
Well,
as a child?
we had never been in a boat before. You don't feel very good. If you don't eat, you're all right. It was one of those shaky boats, you know, you threw up everything.
And were you allowed to roam around, or did you have to stay?
No, you can roam around the boat, yes, but it was not the steamships that we have today. You know, you walk around here and there. It was not too much of an area, and I'm sure that it was overloaded with people.
Were there a lot of
There were
Salonicans,
people,
or-
yes, Sephardic people from Patras in there, which boarded the ship. Yes, we came with many other families.
How many other families do you have any
I
idea?
recall we knew about 10 different families that came with us. There probably were many, many more.
Mostly Monastir.
Monasterians, yes, from monasteries.
And do you remember seeing the Statue of Liberty coming in?
Oh, yes, yes.
What were
yes.
your feelings
Oh,
about
it was
that?
a great feeling. I must tell you that when we came into this country, we thought we came into heaven. We had never had the facilities that existed here. All those beautiful streets, the libraries, the schools, and all these things. We didn't have that there. And of course, we had our people here. We had our clubs. We had our social clubs. It was a beautiful life here on the east side, although we work hard for a living, but it was a very, very enjoyable life.
So life was better in the 20s here for your family.
Life was good in the families. The only problem was a problem with our parents, our mother, where we had a small apartment with two bedrooms on it, and we had our family of 5, and then 2, 3 other boarders, my relatives from who live in Chile now, who lived in Chile now. It was hard for the woman of the house. We used to live on the 5th floor, and they have to go down shopping every day and bring out all that, cook, clean, and everything else. It was very, very difficult for the woman of the house, for our mothers.
What kind of work were you doing in the 20s when you came to New York? When you started to work after school,
Yeah, shining shoes.
and then later on when you finished school?
When I finished school, we began looking for other type of work. Well, we shined shoes for a while. Then we work in factories. We work in battery factories. We had in tin factories. We work in chandelier factories, spraying, whatever was available. And then in due time, of course, in due time, we began getting into the garment business. We learned how to press, and many of our people got together, 2, 3 people. They opened little stores, manufacturing skirts, And that's how the industry developed, and eventually we also went into the business. We were manufacturers together with our brother for many, many years. And my brother passed away quite some time ago, and my nephews still carry on the business.
Did the depression in 1929, the stock market crash, and the depression after 1929?
Well, at that
make a
time
big
I was still
difference?
going to night school, I was graduating in 1929. It didn't seem to affect us anything because we didn't have anything anyway, understand? And people needed to shine shoes, and we shine shoes.
By that time you were married?
No, I was married in 1934. Yes.
And the rest of your family, as the family got older?
Well, my
everyone
older brother got married almost immediately, a year following when we came in here, and then the others got married just about the time that we were married, in the 1930s. Yeah, we all got married.
Any more questions? I'd like to backtrack again a little bit, back to Salonica. Can you just can you just relate some of your memories of Salonica, of the town itself? What was a typical day like for you in Salonica?
Well, as I said, we were not very far away from the waterways. You would see these boats come in, orange boats and other things, and fishermen on the shore. And it was the elegant part of Salonica, the part, very much similar to, you might say, to one of the beach areas which we have now. And we remember the railroad cars, the cars, I'm talking about the trolley cars that used to take us back and forth. And there was a lot of activity. It's a place with a lot of activity, big metropolis. It was a pleasure to walk around and see the stores and the wares and the things that they sold, and we had never seen that in our life before.
What about the people itself? I mean, what were your
Oh,
impressions
the people,
of the people?
the impression of the people, we were with people which we knew, with people who spoke our language, sure. There were many there in Salonica who had come from Monastir, hoping to move into the United States eventually. They did not come to stay there. All those who came from the other areas came there as a point to go back, to go to America. Now we also have some families in South America, in Chile. Some of our relatives were in Chile.
But you never became a Greek citizen. You were always a Serbian citizen.
Eh.
Is that correct? When you were in Salonica.
No, we were still part of the Turkish citizens of Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
You were born in Turkey.
Oh, so you were still, even though it
Yeah.
fell under
We never-
Serbian
no.
rule, you
As a
stayed?
matter of fact, very few of us had any birth certificates to record. We didn't want to record birth certificates. Nobody issues birth certificates. So when you want to know when one was born, you have to think from a period of time when one did this or that. And that's how they determine
You
the
don't know what
age.
your actual birthday is?
No. It's approximately, you ask my mother, it's approximately around that time of the year, so many years ago. And you estimate it, that's about it. None of us have any certificates.
Did any of your older brothers have any problem in either in Monastir or in Salonica and having to go into the army?
In Salonica, we're all too young. We were all too young for that.
Even your older brother, Haim,
Yeah.
was.
In this country, Louie, our oldest brother, was in the service for a period of time. And then later on, their children were in service here. And also my brother's children my other brother's children.
When you first left Monastir to go to Salonica,
Yeah.
in Monastir, when you were young, were there electric lights and?
No, there was no
But
electric.
there was in Salonica when you arrived.
Salonica, yes.
So that was the first time you had seen electric lights and
Oh,
the
sure,
tram,
sure.
the trolley car.
Sure. Well, when we came in this country, you didn't see much of electric lights. You had something with gas. Remember in your houses and there? There wasn't electricity was not that much available in this country. But you had
Salonica
gas, something with gas.
And Salonica had electricity and not gas?
I would imagine so, yes. We must say that anything that any modern city had, Salonica had, because there was a lot of wealthy people there. It was a city to enjoy life.
Do you remember any anti-Semitism at all in Salonica?
Salonica, no. No.
What about Monastir?
No, Monastir, we got along with the Turkish people for hundreds of years. Never anti-Semitism. We got along very well with the Turkish people. When that era ended in 1912, then everything began to tumble around.
Okay. Do you remember when you were in Salonica, do you remember seeing or hearing of the Don Mer?
Seeing what?
The Don Mer in Salonica, the Jewish converts to Islam?
Did you have any Muslim friends? Any Muslim friends in Salonica?
Oh, Muslim friends? No. You tell me in Salonica?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
Our
even
friends would be the
Even in Monastir?
the ones that we spoke to. I mean the ones Sephardic people. No Muslim. You mean Turkish?
Turkish.
No. Or even in Turkey, very few of us associated with the Turks. We got along very well, peacefully, but we never got together with them. Our community was a tight-knit community of Jewish people who kept their tradition for hundreds of years. And I'm happy to say from what I read today that we had a leadership in Monastir, one that took to take care of all these services for all the people, whether they were poor or rich or whatever it is. If they were rich, they managed to demand money to provide the needs for those who were poor.
Did you have any financial problems at all when you were in Salonica?
What kind of problem?
Financial problems.
Financial problems.
Right.
Well, we had no finance.
But were there?
No, the only money we had is whatever our uncles used to come and visit us, give us. I didn't earn any money.
Do you remember what kind of money did you use back then? Do you remember?
Yes, Greek money with a little hole in it, sure. Very much what they used to. Drachmes. Drachmes is in Greece, yes.
What
And
about in
it's-
Monastir?
In Monastir was dinar. It was dinar, very much equivalent to a quarter. To a quarter dinar in silver, a silver one.
Do you remember any songs or what were the holidays like in Salonica? Celebrations?
Well,
What.
We didn't have very much time for holidays. We were not with our father and mother. We had our father. I'm sure that we would have observed them. He would have compelled us to. But from the time that our father passed away, we did not have the same guidance that you might say. Although we went to the synagogue, but it's not the same. While our father was living, he would teach us everything at home. Would conduct our services at home. And then when he passed away, we went to the synagogue perhaps only on holidays, you might say.
Were any of the members of the family, the Meshulam family,
Yeah.
any of them were rabbis?
No.
I know there were some famous rabbis in Salonica by the name of Meshulam.
Not that I know of. Not in our own family. Not our family.
You mentioned that your older sister had passed away when you were in Monastir.
Yes.
Do you remember what
What situation?
reason?
It was, she had some kind of lung problem. I really don't know. I recall the incident very vividly. She probably was about 12 or 13 years old when she passed away.
But there was
How
a
old
lot.
were you?
Huh?
How old were you?
How old was I there? And we're talking about in 1915. I was 7 years old.
Do you remember epidemics? Because there was quite a lot of epidemics in Salonica and Monastir in those days. Do you
I
remember
do
any
not
of that?
remember any epidemics in Monastir or Salonica, but I do remember the epidemics in Loutra, the town in which we spoke, this Loutra there, and many people suffer from the flu at that time. That was during the period where the Spanish flu was traveling all year round. And all the people that live in Loutra, at night time we will all go down into the yard and sleep outdoors because of the contamination, because of the illness there. Yes, many people passed away during that period of time.
From the epidemic?
From the epidemic, yes.
Yeah. And when they sent you to Loutra, it was all indoors? It was houses, or was it barracks?
This was
tents?
all, like a hotel, there's individual rooms in there. And then you had a huge yard in which people would bring their mattresses and sleep in the yard during the nighttime to prevent infection.
Okay. I still have a couple more questions. again, let's go back to your childhood in the schools. At the Allianz, what was a daily regimen like? I mean, when did you go into school? When did you finish?
Well,
the
I
day?
did go in the Allianz because I was too young. My brother Louie, my older brother, was in the Allianz, which was a higher school, you must say, compared to a higher school where they teach you languages and other things. The school in which I went to, they taught us Hebrew, they taught us French, and they taught us Ladino.
Do you remember what school it was?
I remember where it is, but I don't remember the name of it.
Where was it? Where was it?
It was on the, yeah, it was in an area monastery called Tabané. Tabané.
And what time did you get out of school?
What time?
Yeah.
I think we stayed there 5-6 hours a day. We live 2 doors away from the school.
Okay. Again, let's go back to the fire a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you remember? You said fire bombs.
That's the way it appears to. I mean, there were fire bombs. You look all around, you will hear poppings and then flames, poppings and then flames. Of course, we were too young to know. We were too scared on this. Then what we did is run home and see what we had to do.
Do you remember your first impressions of when you saw the city on fire?
We didn't know where it started or why it was. We really don't know.
But you personally, what were you doing the moment you found out or you knew that there was a fire?
Well, we tried to go home. We tried to go home
Where
with
were
our
you?
family. I
Where
may
were
have been out in the streets on the avenue, you know. We would walk along the avenue. Some of those streets had many, many cafes in there. It was a very beautiful place to walk through.
You were
We
together?
would walk around the cafes and sometimes collect cards, playing cards, you know. Collect a few here and a few there. We put them together, get a set.
What kind of cards?
Playing
Collector
cards. Playing cards, yes. Yeah.
And so how were you able to get a wagon? They were just able to.
Well, our uncles took care of that. You know, they paid what they had to pay to transport us and their families and their furniture into the suburbs. And we all moved into the same area in which we stayed there for about 3 months or so until things settled down in Monastir. And they went back to Salonica, and we were taken down to this particular, in Loutra
This suburb,
suburb, yeah.
do you remember what it was called, what the name of the neighborhood was?
You are talking about this particular complex?
The suburb where you first left, when you first left the house with the wagons.
I really don't know what it was called now. I don't know.
Do you remember leaving the city with the fire? Was it afternoon, evening?
It was in the afternoon, sure.
Uh,
Yeah. It probably was several hours after this started that already our mother was told to pack up everything that they're going to send a wagon to take us away.
So there was enough time to pack everything up?
Yes,
and
well,
move.
too much we didn't have. I don't think we took beds, took our clothing or any other valuables. We didn't take beds.
You mentioned furniture. Your brothers took furniture?
I don't know what type of furniture we had there. I'm sure we had some kind of beds at that time. You know, we're speaking about a one-room apartment, you know, in those days. That's all you had. Even in Monastir, you had a one-room apartment where you used it to do everything and to sleep, and a day and nighttime, you know, you would pack up your mattresses and pack them away. You didn't have 4 or 5 rooms. You had a one-room house. And then there was a basement where you kept some of the foodstuffs. And the particular house in which I'm referring to was owned by some of our relatives in there. There was a wide, wide yard in which maybe 20 families from the same families lived there. And they each had one room and a basement to store their foodstuffs. And of course, water was by wells, you know, like this. And bathrooms were outside, and there was no bathrooms in the rooms.
Were the wells, the pumps for the wells
Pumps
inside or
outside, on the yard, sure.
Did you ever hear of a place in Salonica called Dudular?
Dudinar,
Dudular.
Dudular, well, that's the song.
Yeah, many of the people went to Dudular.
Yeah, Dia de Sabami Madre.
Right.
Do you know that song?
Oh, sure,
Can you sing it for us?
well, I don't know the entire thing.
What part
Dia
did you-
de Sabami Madre, Laurica, Laurica dando dos, d'una parte alla otra, Salonico, Salonico se quemó.
That's all you remember?
Well, there's another part to it.
Do you remember that?
Let us see now. Diez del cielo, diez del cielo, diez del cielo, non te puedes que hacemos maldades en los campos, en los campos, en los campos de Dudular. That was camps, I guess is what they're referring to.
Where did you learn that? Do you remember where you heard
In
that?
Salon. Well, I think, no, I think we learned it here. We learned it sure.
Do you remember any other songs from Monastir or Salonica?
Well, I do remember many, many songs, the rhythm of the songs, not all the words, and I treasure those songs because those were songs of joy, songs of pleasure. People sang when they had parties. And in a similar fashion, when we came into this country, while we lived in small apartments in there, whenever you had a celebration, bar mitzvah or engagement, you always did it in the apartment. You would gather in the family, somebody would bring in an instrument, a mandolin, and wine and everything else. It was very enjoyable. Yes, the songs that are in my memory, are still in my memory from those years, the tunes of the songs.
Do you remember the names of any of them?
Well, I wouldn't remember it right now, but they come to my mind quite frequently, although we're talking about 70 years ago.
Did you learn to play an instrument when you were young?
Yes, this is one of the parts that perhaps you haven't asked. On the east side, we have a Sephardic progressive club composed of many, many of our young people who worked here in the day, Sephardic people where we used to meet. And this was one of the most beautiful parts of our life when we became a little older. We went there, we met young ladies, we had music, we had plays, we had many, many things, we had outings in there. It was a tremendous medium for our people at that time. And they had quite several clubs on the east side at that time, social clubs we're referring to.
Let's go back to Salonica. Did you ever go to Dudular?
I don't know where it is.
Did you ever hear of a place in Salonica called Campagnas?
Campagna? And that's campagnas mean in the countryside. That actually means the countryside. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
It was a suburb of Salonica. at
What
that
was the
time.
suburbs?
It was called Campagnas, one suburb.
Campagna, yeah, outside the suburbs of the cities. Campagnas, outside, yes.
Is that where your family went? Or did you go to a different suburb?
You mean to live?
Yeah.
No, we live in an area where there were many apartments there. I would say that it was a respectable area where we weren't very far away from the main avenue of the street, I would say.
Just one quick question. Your family that stayed behind in Salonica and
Yes.
were there when the Germans came in, do you know anything about that at all? Do you remember when was the last time you had been in touch with them?
Well, unfortunately, we didn't keep in touch too much, but we do understand that perhaps after 10 years away here, they sent letters appealing for funds because they were suffering something terrible, and I did not know the conditions there. But of course, we had no such money to send. We sent small amounts.
And that's it, and then you just never heard from them again?
Never heard of them. Well, those that moved away, those that were moved to Mexico, we were in contact. We were in contact all the time.
Right. For the ones in Salonica, you just...
Yeah.
None of the family remained in Monastir.
Our family? No, well, we had this Ergas family, which in turn moved to Chile, Santiago, Chile. We had no other family that we know of. Some of our families, part of the Alcázar families, they come at the time when our brother Louie came in here.
And there's no family left in Monastir now.
There's nobody in Monastir now. We went back to Monastir. We went back perhaps 10, 15 years ago together with our brother Louie and some friends. And it was pitiful. It was pitiful to see the city with a lot of people, but there were no Jews left, not one.
Did you recognize anything in the town?
No, you couldn't recognize. You know, every city gets changed around. You know, after you have a destruction, they build new buildings and everything else.
Were you able to find where you lived?
No, could not find. We found the river that used to run there. And while you're speaking of Monastir, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but there's a book called a town called Monastir that I read continuously, because through that medium I understand what Monastir was all about. When I was there, I didn't know what it was all about, where it's situated there, and everything else. It's very, very well written. Very well written.
I've seen the book.
Yeah.
When you went back, did you also go back to Salonica?
Yes, we went to Salonica. We stayed there a week or two. We met with the community there. We went to the only synagogue, monastery synagogue left there. We went there for services. And then we went to Monastir. We went to other parts of Monastir of Yugoslavia.
Had you gone to that synagogue when you were young?
No, we didn't go to any synagogue while we were in Salonica. No, we had no time for that. We didn't have anyone to take us, let us say.
Did you recognize the city when you went back to Salonica?
Some parts of it, the main avenues we recognize, yes.
But you were not able to find where you lived.
No. Well, in 70 years, everything changes in time, you know.
Much of the city changed.
Sure.
Okay. Do you have any more? One major last question, I guess. How would you describe your childhood in Monastir? Was it a happy childhood? Was it a...
How do I describe what? Salonica?
No, your childhood. Was it a difficult childhood? Was it happy? I mean...
No, it was an easy going with our parents, you know. We used to play, we used to go to school. It was very, very pleasant, you know. It was just simple surroundings, you know, a town. It was not a city, you know. It was more than a nature. You find places nearby where they used to milk cows. You find places where where you had the main business sections. Within walking distance of 15, 20 minutes, you would go from one part to the other. You would go to the great bazaars where they used to display foods, where they used to bring foods from the countryside. And you would go to the areas where they had the mosques. We had quite a few mosques in Monastir. And during the Saturday, after Saturday, we would go to the parks, what you may call the parks, where they used to serve you coffee there.
The version of the song about the fire is a different version than we heard before.
This is different.
Yeah, we've heard the song sang differently, a different version of the song.
But the tune is the same.
It's a little different. It's
Dia de saba mi madre, la orica, dando dos, de una parte a la otra, Salónico se quemó. Diez del cielo, Diez del cielo, no te partes, que hacemos mandates, errata, la. I don't know what that had reference to, the second part reference to.
Did you ever hear it this way?
Huh?
Dia de Shabbat la tadre, la orica dando dos. Dia de Shabbat la tadre, la orica dando dos.
But you can take any tune and change the words, you know.
Fuego salió la agua nueva.
Empezó el agua nueva, Albiesco quedó. This was a tower.
Right.
This was a tower which we were very familiar with in Salonica, right on the shores there.
Dia de Shabbat la tarde, la orica dando dos. Fuego salió la agua nueva. Abeas cule quedó.
You got a different tune there.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add? Anything else you'd like to say?
Nothing really much. What I like to say is what I feel. We're a part of the world where our people live for hundreds of years, and you go there now and there's nothing left. no one to care for the cemeteries. And when we went there, we looked there, we couldn't find anything. It's a sorrowful experience, you know. You think back in those terms of where people live for hundreds of years, and then all of a sudden, within a short period of years, comparatively, nothing remained there. You go there and you speak to some of the people there, and they will tell you, yes, we remember this and that, we remember that family, that, but they're not around anymore.
Very different.
Yes. And of course, we don't have to mention the fact that they had the Holocaust there that destroyed all the people. They took all the people from there and all the people from Salonica. That's the sad part of our era, I would say.
Well, we're lucky to be in America.
Okay. You have any questions you'd like to ask? No? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
All right, quite welcome.